Hey people, it's Gareth here with Just Lore. Or welcome for another philosophical debate about what Frostpunk 2 will most likely be like. It'll be a brief one for me because I have a friend coming over who I haven't seen in a while from South Korea. So let's get down to it.
Let's go.
What's the most interesting thing you are looking forward to, Lore?
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing how oil will affect buildings in the city. That's one thing I want to know. Like, is it?
Oil burns hotter than coal, so it will require less fuel to produce heat. And also, due to piston developments and other things like that, it won't be as expensive. Like you need less to fuel the generator. So I'm assuming that you will be able to heat larger maps and stuff like that with ease, theoretically speaking.
Right,
So
right. Keep going.
the new technology will be fascinatingly interesting.
Yeah, because I mean, the opening, once you have a new resource, then you are able to produce far more than what you were able to produce in the very beginning. So, I mean, coal has its
Fuels were
limitations.
used to make oil is used to make plastics and other resources. So there are a lot of possibilities.
Yeah. There's also this news article that I found online, and it says New London Times generator power at 1,000%. All the current community goals have been uh, let's see that has been reached. So I'm thinking that this might have some form of relation to the new resource.
I mean, people can have power, and it's a luxury. I can see luxury houses with electrical lighting, like the Victorian style,
Yeah.
throughout the Frostpunk. Like I'm talking luxury, like glass and other stuff like that. But glass was already a thing in the
Yeah, it
Frostpunk
is.
universe.
But we don't know how they make it. We don't know where they get the resources from, but somehow they have glass and whatever else they need. But I'm wondering about electricity. Has electricity always been a part of the Frostpunk thing, or is this going to be also a new resource? Because
I think power generation. Remember those rotors behind the tech office?
yeah,
They were produced in forms of electricity. Every now and then you saw a spark or two.
so then that means that in essence, electricity has always been in Frostpunk.
The automatic machines require electricity to function. So, in other words, it's there. I just don't think they knew how to mass produce it.
Agreed. So there's also this thing about grisly murder, mystery outside New London. So it then
I
goes,
think you Jack the Ripper.
huh?
I think you're gonna throw in the Jack the Ripper mysteries on us.
Yeah, that could be it. It says a bone-chilling shiver ripped down the spine of New London's police. See, it says police investigators yesterday when they found the corpse of a diplomat who was declared missing only a few days ago. So if there's a diplomat, then there could be other cities also within the area in which New London occupies.
That is a distinct possibility. Remember the hot springs, the shipwreck, and the coal mines are near New London.
Yeah, well, I mean, those would be in the near vicinity. What about areas a little bit further away? Couldn't there be other cities in a sense?
Yeah, I could see them developing train systems due to the fact the major blizzards are over and stuff like that.
And then there is also in the article it also says 30th anniversary of the Great Storm. Once again, we remember the tragedy that decimated the population of New London 30 long years ago, a dismal memory in our history. There,
Uh, honestly, honestly, I wish that like for me, I lost no one. It was really cold, but I kept the generator functional. No one really died in when the city happens.
but I guess this might be the canon ending to that particular scenario, suggesting that a large amount of people had died during the storm itself. So, regardless of
How
what
many is the question? Are we talking like 20, 50, 30, 100?
it doesn't say exactly how many. It just says Great Storm was a cornerstone of change for the society. Every year we praise the men and women who showed courage and steadfast will during a test that seemed beyond our collective strength. And then it says, um, whatever it is, only.
They could be referring to like the science teams and other stuff like, NASA's point. I reached there before the storm got it.
Mhm.
That scientist went off toward the storm.
The thing about
So
that,
they could be referring to.
but the thing I kind of find a little bit interesting is that scientist by the name of Nancy, even throughout the entire scenarios that are directly connected to New London, there has been no real evidence to show what his fate was in terms of did he die or did he survive, and it's been a debate in the Frostpunk community for a while. We've been trying to determine, is Nansen alive or is he dead?
Hmm, good question. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say he froze to death.
I am of the opinion that he died somewhere in some cave or some location probably near to where he went, because when the scouts reached his outpost and they found his papers, it said that the storm was a reoccurring event. In it goes in phases and then it subsides and starts again. But then there's another thing going back to the article that we were looking at, where it says the 30th anniversary of the Great Storm. I think this little title in the other section of the New London Times that has oil at the top of it, it kind of really, looking at it, it says 30th anniversary. Does this mean that the Great Storm no longer exists? Have the New London, or have the Londoners tamed the Great Storm? That's something I'm actually looking at and wondering.
It's a strong possibility that they have found a way to produce heat efficiently, but yeah.
Oh, hold on. William Wall says, remember that there are multiple cities in the edge. New London threatens us if we cooperate with the farmers. Forget the name, who was aided by another city, which I think New London
Oh,
is
but he's
named.
talking about the last story event. I forget
Yes,
what it was
the
called.
on the edge. That's the name of it, where the different cities were practic. Well, I wouldn't really call them. I don't think they were cities as yet, but I would say they were like minor settlements. But they all had their own alliance against New London, and New London threatened them in a sense,
Oh
saying that
yeah, I remember. I kicked out their workers, and they basically threatened me. And then they came begging, and they saved us our botanical butts.
because that was another thing that we need to really think about in terms of like whether or not these other minor settlements could have actually grown. He says New London probably takes pride in the fact that they thought they were the sole survivors, which they were not, and the diplomat was probably killed for trying to influence the other city. Well, I think that could be it. That could be the case, because we know that the inhabitants of New London are very
Or it
famous.
could be like, Jack the Ripper style. Please, Jack the Ripper's popular in steampunk.
I know you want
So
something
yeah.
like that. Like it
No,
could go
I'm not
either
lying. It could
way.
be Jack the Ripper, like it or not. It's a
It's
possibility.
a
Possibility.
possibility.
Another diplomat dies because he's trying to influence another town. I can see it. Jack the Ripper is influenced by these people.
Or maybe there might be like one. I've seen this in multiple scenarios where there is some form of serial killer that goes around doing certain things within the cities in a sense. Remember there was a situation that occurred in the last autumn where some guy was killing people and you had the option to either make him stay or send him away. That was something else that played a part in the development of that particular story.
What path would you have to take for that to happen?
I think I it wasn't a really case that you had to take any form of action.
Because I never encountered as far as my memory goes, forgive me, my memory is a bit fragmented due to a concussion. Uh, yeah. So I don't recall ever encountering that event, unfortunately.
That was more mostly a unique event that took place. That it happens
Hmm.
based on certain decisions that you make, and then those
I
decisions.
managed to get the generator in production like the first time I failed, but at the second time I kept ahead of everything. That and I always kept the production ahead of schedule. So yeah, like I even made it before the storm, like the ice froze.
So
Froze.
the next thing that I'm actually going to bring up as well is the fact that from the very beginning we knew that the Frostland was actually a lush, magnificent forest before, and wherever the game is set, it was full of resources in the form of both coal, and where there's coal, there's
Wood,
right,
metal.
right, and wherever those resources can be found, there's also fossil fuel. So that was one of the many contributing factors that would have led them to build in a particular area. And also going back to the last autumn, I did some additional research. I'm yet to actually post a video on it, but from my understanding, each one of the locations selected by the Imperial Exploration Company had at least 3 generator sites. So the last autumn had 3 generator sites. New London had 3 generator sites, and any other area within the Frostland would have had at least 3 generator sites themselves. So if one failed, then the people from that one would move to the next. So I'm also
Yeah, but that would be very risky due to the resource demands. So yeah, like it's gonna be interesting how they're gonna pull off the second Frostpunk. Like, is it gonna be like an empty town like you're making your own city now or something
I,
like that?
based upon what I've um understood from looking into what they've been saying and the fact that they have over 70 plus people working on the project and they're making all sorts of new changes. I think they've actually started to listen to what the community wants, and cities are going to be less of a less of a structured system and more of a fluid system where the book of laws is up to your interpretation of what you need at the present moment. So see something coming in the format of like city skylines mixed
Well,
with
like
some
say you have a lot of people who suddenly drop dead, you can have a temporary corpse law and then reverse it, and have the cemetery system like that.
exactly, yeah, something like that where in a sense there's societal, political and technological changes that you can make within the city, and then those changes would affect the city in some way. Wall is asking, what do you think about a war system? I think it's possible if they can, if they,
I don't exactly agree. Like, unfortunately, like I could see small like group of 10, 20 people fighting, but not a large scale,
I
unfortunately.
wouldn't see, I would look at it in a case similar to what happened in the refugee situation where there was a camp set up outside the city and they would come in and raid the city at different points in time. That
And
was
then
a
you could
thing.
destroy them and send your own raiding teams. Depending
Yes.
on how well they armed, it would determine how well they fared.
Yes, so I'm thinking that that could actually be something in a sense where the developers could say, all right, we have a lot more resources, so maybe we can fit in some form of war mechanics. I'd see it as something
But
like,
as I say, but I think the storms will come back because what Nardis said.
well, that's a possibility. I mean, it's
Yeah.
weird. I find it very weird. They say 30 years since the great storm. Is the great storm gone? And even if the great storm is gone, we still know that they're minor storms. What are you saying?
What? Um, Minor storms every so often causes the city to halt.
Very, very much so. So more than likely, thinking about it, it could work. Some form of war mechanic. It would have to operate like Total War Attila, in a sense of like the raiding parties would come, and then you would either go back to their city or they come to yours, and you take them over, or they take you over or damage your city. That's the way I see it. They send it, and the mere fact that they're diplomats, they could also be spies.
True. Intrigue. political intrigue was very common back then.
Yes, it
Uh,
was.
like the technological development, like there was so much development during that period, but like it or not, the population levels could not sustain in what happened during that time. Unless the population has exploded due to massive resources crisis, I don't see a population that feasible.
Well, from
So,
what I'm looking at, I think I think New London has returned to the levels of the city of London itself. Wall is
I
saying,
highly doubt that.
highly doubt it.
Biologically speaking,
Don't think
it
so.
can a population boom would require a lot of people. I'm talking more space, more room.
More
Either
room.
they built bigger houses. There are a lot of variables to require a population to explode.
Uh,
Look at the technological age, like how fast the population shot up. There was always abundance of food.
I see. So food is
Move-
the
there's-
main thing.
Food is one of the major requirements. Space and warmth would be a mandatory requirement. They would need to keep things stable. On the edge, things kind of hit a kind of a
A
wall.
wall, right? Yeah, I remember that.
So let's just say their population system, if they keep going through issues like that, I could see it fluctuating, but I can see outposts, a lot of large outposts.
Agreed.
But people would act on their own terms. Like I could see things different, like not working so well. But I honestly see uh, see a population can and thrive. The hot springs and other places. There's probably a lot of more survivors than we anticipate. It's just
So Wall
they
was
found good places.
hold on. I'm gonna
They-
add something to what you said. Wall is saying I would say like raiders or commandos you send to sabotage, plunder other cities using gunmen, armed ammunition defense against the raiders. And I think that ties into what you were saying about the whole population thing and the outposts going their
It
own
will
way.
be a serious limitation. The population. Unfortunately, there won't be that many people anymore, or like refugees and stuff like that,
Yeah.
unless they came from the deep south and they went all the way up to these places hoping for a better life.
Well,
But honestly, people tend to like when disasters like that it tends to glue people down. It's a historical fact that people tend to anchor themselves to try to stabilize things.
agreed,
Like half
agreed.
the planet is probably frozen.
So then, more than likely, what could be the case is that we might have raiders and something like commando forces that roam the Frostland and ravage
But I
outposts
see
and
them as a
cities.
very limited, like maybe 15
15 or
men.
10 or so, but they come around once in a while. You
Yeah,
know,
like
yeah.
I get, but like it or not, uh, uh,
It's a complicated situation because of the situation taking place in the edge and the fact that the city itself was almost in a sense decimated because of the events that took place within that particular story. When we look at the fact that New London actually ran out of food and resources and it had to expand outwards to actually find other resources to sustain itself, which leads me back to another thing. They need to make use of the airships for other purposes apart from just gathering food. These
I could
airships,
see them using them as a transportation mechanism.
I would believe that that would be the best thing for them to do. I mean, if you can build the small ones, why not build the large ones and send those on expeditions to find?
Large ones are more susceptible to wind gusts.
That's true. That's true. However, judging from the fact that they have advanced so far, there might be a way to kind of mitigate that in some form of engine of the sort. We're not sure, but the mere fact that they have steam cores and all that. And then there's this strange I have this very strange feeling in my head that the elements that they use to build the generator can be repurposed to build steam cores. I don't know why I feel that way.
Yeah, I could see that, but steam cores required rare resources.
You think so?
Well, yes.
I think it's a possibility that it might actually be the case that they use the steam cores. in a sense to build other things, but they could actually make them in a sense. That's what I'm thinking. I'm looking at it and I'm saying that these elements can be used to make steam cores. It's just it's just maybe adding in one final ingredient and then boom, you have steam cores.
Maybe oil can.
Maybe that might be it. And I am of this strong opinion that oil was always in the lore. I mean, what's that mysterious chemical that was in the Victorian land dreadnoughts that caused people to suffocate in a sense and just die when they entered? Strange, huh?
Yeah, but like there was a rare resources required. You couldn't manufacture steam cores in the game, and there was a reason because of rare resources.
And it requires a lot of power to produce. I think that steam cores are made using high amounts of energy, maybe in the sense of oil. But I mean, their use of oil at the time was probably in small quantities, because I mean the resource wasn't really fully exploited at the time.
There was always oil always bubbled to the surface. There were tar pits and other things they could use an oil for extracting. That's what they used in the early days for oil. Did
Okay.
you know that? That was
Ah,
like before the Industrial Revolution, before they knew how to suck the stuff out of the ground.
well, I actually I didn't know it in that detail, but thanks for the info. So then, in a sense, in some crude, rudimentary setting, they would have been able to actually extract it in some form. Interesting.
Oh yes. Oh yeah.
But
Yep. That's how oil worked.
so
Like
then,
it was mainly tar though.
yeah, and then probably they found a way to extract it. And I mean, looking at the chemical plant that I was talking about years ago, that you can find as a relic in game, that chemical plant can also be used in a sense to probably produce resources, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So so Wall is asking, who do you think built the oil plants? Well, in essence, the oil plants were probably built by engineers within New London after they discovered some plans in some form of machinery or some location within the Frostland. They're going to twist the lore's narrative in that way that somebody discovered it, either captain of the city or some random citizen found this black goo somewhere, and then they started to exploit it. And then what happens is they build an entire technology tree around that resource in a sense of extracting, purification, modification, other uses to create plastics and all those other things. Um, Mage, what's your interpretation as to why the generators were built below the freezing line?
Hmm. Natural gas deposits could boost the generator's power. There is a toxic gas below the generator.
Agreed. And that toxic gas, what do you think it could be? I wonder if it's carbon dioxide or something else. I'm not sure. But there's something about these gases that you can find in mining shafts. It could be an oil, it
Well,
could
common natural gas.
maybe natural gas because the area is technically filled with fossil fuel type resources. So that could be the case because whenever they're working on the
I live in
generators,
Alberta, Canada. Oil
uh
and gas are intrinsically mixed. My dad's a geologist. He found gas deposits just as much as oil deposits.
so if they're mixed, then that could mean that in a sense oil could be below the generators, which is why they dig the shaft so deep. But then the generator is powered by steam and coal. Something ain't
I
adding
think
up.
the gas is like a mechanical booster, like boosts the heat, boosts the energy.
Yes,
You know,
I think so too. I think probably it's a case where it boosts the heat in some format or in some way. It's very it's very unique. I'm supposed to do a video talking about the construction of generators. But the thing is about them is that in the first stage, the Imperial Exploration Company digs a giant hole. What the hell did they use to dig the hole? Nobody knows. And then they use
It
a lot.
is.
Go ahead.
I have no idea. The hole is well made
Very
very thinly, very, very precise. Whoever built the generator knew what the hell they were doing.
more than that. I think the generators themselves. All right. Here's my theory. The generators were built the way they were so that if anything should happen and the soil should shift, the infrastructure or the megastructure would not shift and cause a catastrophic explosion or a catastrophic fault. So they built them deep below the freezing line to protect the most vital parts of the generator and the, and the
And
also
to prevent earthquakes.
right. And it's to stabilize the
It
soil
makes
above.
sense from a geological standpoint.
Agreed.
But that region, where is the Frostpunk land exactly? I don't remember off
They
the top of my head.
they're
Concussion.
saying it's somewhere near, I think Norway or something like that. Somebody said it in chat where it was near Norway or somewhere in that area. But I'm not
Far
exactly.
north, gotcha.
Huh?
These areas, as far as I can recall, they're geologically stable zones.
Agreed.
So earthquakes are not common as far as I can tell.
So it's probably not. Well, I mean, it's near where London can be found, and it's near that area. So up in that area where the United Kingdom is, that's where it's really located per se.
Nor, nor, nor.
Norway in that area. I mean, in any case, the developers will reveal that particular small um, detail at some point in time when they do another prequel covering before the generator was built, before the storm, or some saga like that. You know, because I mean, out of all the games that I've played thus far, Frostpunk is one of the best ones. And here is another bit of info relating to the article. Are we witnessing?
Minor tremors.
Go ahead.
What earthquakes happen? It appears that Norway has minor earthquakes. In November of 2008, 6.8 minor struck the Arctic. Oh, so it is in a geological stable area.
All right.
5.8 in 1904, around the time they built the generators, correct?
Mm-hmm.
It was a massive earthquake.
So I'm guessing. So in that sense, we can say that the area is geologically active, but we haven't seen any actual evidence to show that in the game. Maybe the developers didn't think about adding that in. But what we do know for a fact is that the game takes place in a very resource-rich environment, allowing you to
Norway is highly rich in many resources. Or I'm not sure about oil.
probably is too, or people tend to change the way how um, stories are told. And they have their own little stuff that they write in to make it make sense. So that's probably what could be.
Norway holds about 5 billion barrels of oil, according to 1828. They have a lot of oil reserves. Let's just put it simply.
Interesting.
So it's possible that they did set up in Norway.
Probably, or somewhere in that vicinity. That's my interpretation of what
No,
we know.
metal and coal can be found there, but I'm not. Yep, there's plenty of coal and oil in Norway, so it's possible they built in Norway and the mountain regions could support the Norway thing. And Norway is pretty far
It
up.
is. It's in the same vicinity
So
as
it's
where.
above. It's above Kingsland. We could be like Iceland had the same things. We could be in Sweden for all we know. We don't really know. We're just in a colder spot than London. But there's like we could be in Iceland. Hell, we could be like in Salabera or like that's like above Norway